This is EconBros podcast, and my name is Gokul, and my co-host here's name is.
Manish.
So the EconBros podcast is a finance, business, economics podcast, and our audience is obviously going to be more high schoolers, right? So we have a special guest here. His name is Andrew. So do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, I am currently a university student and also run quite a few TikTok accounts. My main one has about 4 million followers, and I've been doing that part-time for a while now. I recently got an investment from a company to sort of do that full-time, so I'm going to look into doing that full-time as well. And one of my accounts is a college advice as well as finance account where I talk about money, college majors, and all that stuff. So, happy to explore that with you guys today.
Yeah, I'm actually glad that you mentioned that because we're going to ask you like college advice, obviously. So The first question is like, kind of controversial, but like a college degree, do you think it's like worth it in this like economic status? Because I know a lot of people don't have the money, obviously. Every year it's increasing. So what is going on there?
Yeah, so I think maybe 50, 100 years ago when our parents were sort of going to college, it was a lot more worth it to get a college degree because a college degree was basically a guarantee at a high paying job, or at least a significant improvement upon not having a college degree. But now a lot of people are forced to take out a shit ton of student loans. And then if you're not, getting a lot of benefit from that college degree, you're going to be not only stuck with a job that is pretty low paying, but you're also going to be stuck with a bunch of loans that you now need to pay off. So certain degrees are still definitely worth it. I think the ones that are hurt the most from a long time ago are the ones that are typically lower paying. You got stuff like psychology or journalism or some business majors that are less popular. Those no longer return you as much as they did like 50, 100 years ago. So.
Yeah, so that was Manish, you have a question?
No, go ahead.
So the top college majors, like what do you think that would be? Like for money-wise especially?
Yeah, so it really depends on everyone's situation, right? For example, if you're going to a mid-tier school, it would probably be something in STEM, right? But if you're going to say an Ivy League or, NYU or Michigan Ross, chances are you might want to study something like finance if your goal is just purely to make money, right? Because some jobs in finance, they will basically only touch people that are top 1% students. If you just look at what percentage of people they even give interviews to, it's extremely low. But on the other side, STEM, it's a lot more flexible into your background and your education, and it's a lot easier to network your way in. So I think if you are coming from a lower tier school, community college, state school, probably something in the STEM field is a lot more beneficial to you versus if you're at a super apex level school, Ivy Leagues, the type of stuff I mentioned before, chances are you're probably going to want to study something more like finance.
So do you mind like just saying your major real quick?
Yeah, I'm a computer science major.
Okay. Also, do you have any idea like about the finance majors? Because I know you talk about that a lot.
Yeah, I recruited for investment banking.
Okay, so like what do you think about like the finance major? Because me and Manish, like we're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing with the finance major, right? Is in this major in particular, there are far more people studying it than jobs available. And then if you compare that to high paying jobs available, it's even less, right? And the reason is I think the concepts within college are extremely easy to grasp, right? There's nothing really, mind-boggling that you're gonna learn that you otherwise would have learned in, say, engineering, physics, computer science. Because of that, it's pretty accessible to, get this degree and have a pretty fun time in college doing it. So a lot of people are going to study that, as well as the fact that the top 0.1% of people earn a shit ton of money. So a lot of people sort of magnetized to this major because of that, right? So it's very difficult to land yourself a very high-paying job in the finance field. So it forces you to do a lot of extracurricular things, right? Say networking, say doing a lot more on-campus initiatives that you otherwise wouldn't have needed to do if you chose something like, aerospace engineering or computer science. So the hard part of this major is different than STEM majors. You have to spend a lot more time networking, hustling, getting yourself even an interview. Versus in STEM majors, you could sort of just maintain very good grades and do a little bit of networking and be able to land yourself a very solid offer.
So what are your thoughts on the CS major? Is that similar? Because I know like
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of people say like CS is so much people going into that as well. So
Yeah. I think finance is like just like 20 years ahead of CS. I think in 20 years, CS is going to be pretty similar to finance in that you're not just going to be able to scrape by with really good grades and do really well. And I think the major itself is far more difficult than finance. I've taken finance courses and I've taken intro CS courses that they do not even compare. Because of that, your competition will just inherently be smaller, right?
Yeah.
If you can graduate with a CS degree with even mediocre grades, you are facing a lot less competition because those people that dropped out of CS are, I don't know, probably in finance now. So, yeah.
So like, there's like this work life balance that so much people like talk about. They want that, right?
Yeah.
Do you think these two majors would like, are they good for that work life balance?
Yeah. Well, I could tell you, it really depends on what you're doing when it comes to the work life balance question. There are some jobs that pay you really well, but the work itself is so shit that even if you're working very few hours, you're not going to want to do it. For example, like, have you heard of a saturation diver?
No.
It's one of the highest paying blue collar jobs out there. What you do is you go in a diving bell and basically go to the bottom of the ocean and weld shit, and you get paid like $500,000 a year to do it, and you only work like 6 months, right? But that job is just so shit that even with the high pay, even if you're working only 1 month throughout the year, chances are you don't want to do it, right? So the work-life balance for that job would be different than something in computer science where you're, living in luxury in Silicon Valley, Google campus, just, making really good money and not having to work that many hours. But in terms of like an optimum work-life balance that you probably wanted to touch on, I think that it varies for every person. But when it comes to money, I think you need to be able to work enough to make it, but you also need to have enough free time to spend that money. Otherwise, it's, there's no point in making a lot of money.
There's literally no point in making money. Yeah, Manish, you got no question?
Yeah, so I wanted to touch base in, I know you mentioned a lot of CS and finance, so coming back into the finance part, I know you did an internship in investment banking.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, like, how was your experience in investment banking and how did you land it? Because investment banking is a big job. I really want to do investment banking myself. So, yeah.
So I think the first thing is during interviews, they'll sort of ask you to tell your story. And I think that's probably the biggest thing you need to be prepared for, because I thought I was I'd done a ton of investment banking interviews. I thought I was always fully prepared for that question. I never even rehearsed it, and I would just sort of go off and start talking about it. But it turns out that's not really a good way to go about it. Everyone thinks they know their own story, but it's something that really does need to be rehearsed. So I think first off is interview preparation. That shit needs to be nailed down, because you're going to be interviewing with people that will have it nailed down. So if you don't have it nailed down, you're not going to land the job. The second one is a lot of networking. I actually didn't need to do a shit ton to get this job just because it was a smaller firm. But if you want to get a job at a bigger firm, you need to be sending at least, I'd say, 5 to 10 emails a day, asking people for coffee chats. And you should be aiming to do at least 2 a week, I would say. And the point of these are to establish a relationship with someone working at the company, and using that relationship, right, you could, during the application process, hopefully finesse yourself in an interview, because eventually, maybe not every connection can help you, but eventually you're going to get one that will help you. And that's the difference between landing a job and not landing one.
Investment banking, like, I heard there's it's like, would you say it's like oversaturated? Like, so much people just want to go into it, but it's like, it's not that like beneficial. Would you say that?
I mean, in terms of, is it oversaturated? I would say yes. I mean, if you just 1% of people that apply get the job, right? But so if you're, a pretty average student going in and wanting to do investment banking at these elite companies, you are competing with super elite students. So unless you're a super elite student, sometimes it's not really worth your time, right? But if you are a super elite student, it's definitely not to the point where the field is so oversaturated that they're no longer hiring new people. They're definitely hiring new people every year. And if you put in the work, do the connections, do all the stuff on your end, so long as you come from a comfortable enough background to get in, you will probably land at least some interviews and have a chance.
So I know you also did a finance intern.
Yeah.
So what was your overall experience between investment banking intern and your finance intern?
Well, the investment banking one was definitely a lot more stressful than the finance one. I think the finance one was to clarify how I got the finance one. I actually didn't even need to apply. My friend's mom is like a director of marketing at the company, so I just sort of, she sort of just leashed me in. Internships, the difficulty really, in my opinion, doesn't depend so much on the job title as it does the company itself. Some companies are just a lot more chill with their interns. Others are a lot more stressful. And I will say the stressful ones are oftentimes better for you, even if you're paid the same. A lot of people are like, oh, why would you want the stressful one? It's because it really gives you something to talk about for future employment, right? Something to put on your resume and show that you actually did this hard work. Versus the easy one I did at the finance place. I wasn't a huge fan of it because I sort of just sat around for 60% of the day doing absolutely nothing.
So, I just want to switch to this topic, kind of connects, but there's this thing called less more, right? So it's it's where people always want to keep getting all this high status, high titles, but what are your thoughts on the quote less more? You would rather want less to be more happier, I guess that's what you say.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I understand that. Could you explain that again?
So, for you, how would you say people always want money is one of their top priorities, right?
Yeah.
So how would you say people who want these super high status jobs, how they can get that happiness without yeah.
Yeah, so here's my theory on that, I guess. So I'm someone, I value money a lot, okay? I'm a big fan of making a lot of money because I think money gives you the freedom to do whatever the hell you want, at least in some point in your life, right? But I do think there are some people that will overgo on this point because I know that I'm gonna retire early, all right? That's just my plan. I'm gonna make a lot of money so I can retire early. There are people out there making $3 million a year, working their ass off, neglecting their wife and kids just so they could keep working at age 65. What's the point of doing that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think the balance shouldn't just be found in your daily life, right? Obviously, there's things you should be balancing, but I think it's more so the start and the end point. You need to have a very clear position on that, I think, as you enter the job market and go to college.
Yeah, as you mentioned job market, so how is the job market right now? Because I see people getting getting laid off, and I see
it's definitely not good because not only are people being laid off, right? Those people that are getting laid off from say Facebook, Amazon, Google, they are now competing with the new grads for certain positions, right? And on top of that, interns aren't getting return offers. Right? So those interns, say they interned at, I don't know, Meta, Amazon, you're now competing with those people for new grad positions as well. So new grads are pretty fucked, right? People, mid-level jobs are also pretty fucked because, as I mentioned before, all the layoffs, people recruiting all the time. And I think if you are familiar with the startup space at all, tech startups, those are not that good as well. The funding is, from what I know, my limited experience is significantly less than it was during say COVID, pre-COVID times.
Manish, you got something?
Yeah, so I know you said you did internships both there, and then you said about your job opportunities and how the job market is as of right now. Yeah. So let's come back into the Silicon Valley Bank, what happened there. Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you about overall, what was your standpoint about Silicon Valley Bank?
I mean, to be honest, I didn't know a whole lot about it. I just know it's similar to the bank collapses that had previously taken place, right? They borrowed too much and they have too little, right? So I do think there's a certain culture around big banking that needs to be fixed because when you think about it, a lot of these banks will borrow super aggressively, right? Say 2008, say before. They'll borrow very aggressively, and when they fail, they're bailed out by taxpayers who need to sort of pay to keep them afloat, right? And then 100%. The issue is they go back to doing that again. So if they win, the big banks obviously make a shit ton of money. If they lose, the taxpayer loses. They pay to keep those banks afloat. You know what I mean? So I think there needs to be either regulation or some sort of laws around to sort of change that culture, right? Like, I'm okay if they want to take big risks, right? But I think that, ultimately, like, it shouldn't come from the taxpayers to bail them out.
Definitely.
Also, I wanted to ask one quick question. Like you said, like, would you say you would rather go for something you're passionate about in a job or just for the money? Because I see like your TikToks. Obviously, you talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think there's a mix of both that sort of needs to take place. I think that a lot of people will confuse their passion for something with their passion for the job related to that thing. The example I like to give is, if you love animals, that does not mean you're going to love being a veterinarian, okay? If you're passionate about being a veterinarian, that's when you should go become a veterinarian. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have that confused. Ultimately, a lot of stuff they love will turn into a job and become unenjoyable because of that. Example I like to give, so I was a movie YouTuber for about a year, right? I got like 500,000 views of videos, so I made pretty good money off that. But during that time, I was unable to enjoy a movie because every time I watched a movie, I'd eventually think about how I had to make a video of it. So it just like produced stress and anxiety in my head. So I realized that, yes, I did love being a movie watcher, right? But that doesn't mean I like being a YouTuber about movies. Does that make sense? So at the end of the day, I think 95% of anything you enjoy, should you attach a money value to it and a sense of responsibility and duty to it, it's going to become very stressful and you're not going to enjoy it, just like any job out there. So you might as well aim for a job that, is going to pay you very well so you can stop working and then do the shit you enjoy.
Yeah, that was actually a great point. I'd never see someone put that out. Yeah, that was a great point. But let's shift to like a new kind of topic. It's like more of like the technology, the social media aspect. Like, I feel like you know a lot about that as well. So you also AI as well. I feel like that's a big topic nowadays.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what do you think of like AI? Like, just thoughts. Like, what is
Yeah, so first off, I think it should be around, right? Obviously, it is a way of making both society and individuals more efficient. I do think there needs to be some sort of regulation for what it's going to replace. I know there's probably going to be some question coming about whether AI will replace or increase productiveness of every worker. And I think that the answer is sort of both, right? It's definitely going to replace at least some people, right? If you're a truck driver, right? Or if you are a data entry clerk, right? You will be replaced within the next 10 years. Like, I can nearly guarantee that, right? And the question sort of is, will this AI generate enough jobs to where those people that got kicked out of their jobs due to AI, will they be able to find another job that would help support them? If not, then I think there needs to be some sort of regulation or some way of taxing these AI companies so that the profit they gain is redistributed back into people that lost their jobs, right? I think there needs to be something in place to make sure that society doesn't just completely fall apart. Because think about it. If the number one most popular job for high school men, a trucker, right? If they're all out of jobs because of AI self-driving trucks, right? They're going to need to survive somehow. And there's only so many jobs within the United States that I don't think AI can sort of create new jobs that they could go into. So there needs to be something done about that, in my opinion. I don't know what it is, but something's going to be done within the next 10 years, I hope.
So would you say like CS? Would you say it can take a couple CS jobs?
Yeah. I would say it will take some, not directly though. Like, it's not going to be like, okay, this bot knows how to code this, so we're going to, fire this guy and replace him with a bot. It's more so now one person can do 3 people's jobs. So now why hire 3 people, right? At the moment, I think we're at a point where the companies would rather hire those 3 people, enhance them with AI. Now you have, 9 times the output, right? But at a certain point, I think companies are going to cap out to where they no longer want those 3 people. They're just like, okay, we only need one person with AI that does a job of 3 people to maintain the status quo, maintain what we've been doing. So I think we're going to get to that point eventually. But I think in computer science field particularly, I think AI will open a lot of jobs and a lot of ways to enter the field, because the skills to work with AI, from my understanding, is sort of interchangeable with computer science. Maybe they don't know exactly how to do it yet, like from CS to AI, but they're very related. And that's why a lot of people sort of study that together in university.
So I had a question about, I know you're saying like CS might not take over AI and like the other way around, but my question would be more towards like AI overall, like economy, like how is AI affecting the economy?
Yeah, I think the thing with AI is its effect won't be as immediate as a lot of people think, right? For example, it's going to take a long time for AI to get mature. It's going to take a long time for Congress to approve regulations for AI to work, and it's going to take even longer for a lot of companies to adopt AI completely. So first off, I don't think this is a super, something that's going to happen very soon when it comes to AI, like taking over shit. But I think that the overall impact of the economy should be a growth, but people at the very bottom that aren't able to adopt AI, those are going to be the people that I think are going to be screwed the hardest because they're not going to benefit from AI increasing their productivity.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
They're going to suffer from like AI taking their job.
Yeah.
So
So now I wanted to like talk about social media. Like, do you think it's like a net positive or a negative in this society?
Yeah, well, okay, so I'll put it two ways. So if social media never exists, like if today social media was completely banned, I think it would be a net positive on society to ban it, because I don't think it has any positive benefit other than reduce. Okay, that's not even a positive benefit. It doesn't have any effect other than reducing your attention span and give you momentary happiness. I think the momentary happiness can be derived in ways that are healthier than sitting on your phone all day, both physically and mentally, right? But at the same time, I think social media has given birth to a new way of sort of being independent of a company. Say our parents' generation, right? If you weren't an athlete or a celebrity, like movie star, chances are you had to work for a company, right? Or start your own company, both of which are pretty stressful and pretty hard to do. I think social media has given so many people within the US an opportunity to be independent of those things, and be their own boss, right? And then gain 100% of their profits should they, not hire anyone. And I think that in itself is a positive.
So are we over like dependent nowadays? Is that?
Yes, yeah, for sure. Like, think about it. You are not able to go through a day without seeing someone else on social media, right? And I think that's an issue. Obviously, like, there's going to be some people that can put down their phone for months, if not years at a time, and just not use a phone, right? But those people will still see the impacts of social media. They'll see everyone on their phone. They'll see everyone with shorter attention spans. They'll see everyone, just sitting all day, right? Having a lot worse physical health because they're sitting around watching TikTok. And I think that will sort of push that person that had previously not used social media to adopt more social media just because everyone else is doing it. And I think that's sort of the biggest issue. You don't really have a choice anymore. You kind of are forced to, go into that.
Manish, you have a question?
Yeah, so I was gonna ask, like, overall, like, social media, like, I know, like, social media is a big impact to this day, but, like, my question is, like, what's the future in, like, social media, though? Like, do you think there's any future?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be more and more ingrained into the lives of people, right? Like, for example, now, when you're bored, you might use social media, but if you see with TikTok Shop, now if you wanna go shopping, you use social media. In the past, that wasn't a thing. Soon it's going to be if you want to exercise, you're going to use social media. And as soon as it's going to be sleep, you want to monitor the quality of sleep using social media, right? More and more things are going to be sort of plugged into social media to the point where I think it's inevitable. There's really not much we can do about it. But I think the future will definitely be, as I said, more ingrained with what we're doing now. But at the same time, I think the future as a content creator will open up for a lot more people, just because there's going to be, a new frontier of stuff every once in a while. Innovations driven through social media that's going to help, someone making that living their job.
Do you see any, like, are there any ethical concerns in social media? Like,
I think there's two really big ones that I want to talk about. So the first one is false advertising, right? Everyone knows about this one, right? Someone advertising a bunch of fake shit or advertising news that is barely relevant. Like, they'll have like a really bizarre headline. You click into the news article, there ain't shit there related to the headline, right? So that sort of false advertising, I think, is driven by social media, okay? Because people want those clicks, right? They want to go through the algorithm. So you're incentivized to fuck with people through clickbaiting and all that shit. Excuse me. The second one is content creators that are driven through drama, in my opinion, are the biggest issue on social media, period. No matter you're left, you're right, you're black, white, like I don't care. If your content is purely driven by drama, you are incentivized to create more drama or to overemphasize drama that otherwise shouldn't have existed, right? Oftentimes I see these drama content creators, they find two very small people arguing on the internet and they blow that up into something it's not. And then the loser of that argument is gonna literally lose their job, right? I don't think that should be a thing in social media, right? But it's the reality that people love drama, and these people that profit off the drama are constantly aiming to highlight and stir up new dramas that I don't think should be highlighted at all.
Yeah, Manish.
Yeah, so I had a question about like coming back into the AI topic a little bit with social media. Like,
Sure.
like what do you think? What do you think? So, you think social media will change AI?
I don't think social media will change AI too much. Obviously, I think there might be some legislation or something regarding AI that is going to be pushed through social media, because I think soon social media is going to become a much bigger political mouthpiece than it is today. Today, you can split the use up between, I don't know, road picket signs, you got TV ads, radio ads. Like, I think give it, another 10 years and social media is going to take up a much bigger chunk of the pie when it comes to political advertising and that type of stuff. And we can see that already. There's a lot of, political accounts that are sponsored by political camps, mostly Democrat Party, because obviously the Republican Party doesn't like TikTok. But on the flip side, right, will AI change social media? I don't think in the short term it's going to do much. If you've seen those AI content creators creating like a fake person talking, those videos really do well in getting views, but they don't do very well in creating a community. And I think creating a community is the most important aspect of running a successful social media account. AI cannot do that yet or even get close. So I think that in the short term, that's not gonna have an effect. But in the long term, if AI can fully replicate me talking, then we might have some problems where AI is either gonna be super expensive and only large companies or rich influencers are able to purchase this AI, right? And that gives them a huge competitive edge against someone that doesn't, right? So I think that's gonna be the biggest issue regarding AI and social media. It's gonna be unfair eventually. And I think that with AI, right, you're basically gonna be able to pump out significantly more content, right? It's gonna oversaturate the content creation space, I think quite significantly, to the point where it's gonna be very difficult to get in unless you yourself employ AI. Right, so it's going to force you to use AI, and it's just going to be harder to get in because there's going to be more videos being made every day.
Yeah, so now let's just switch gears into personal finance and then the economic systems.
Sure.
So like what is your financial standpoint on side venues and side hustles and all that?
Yeah, so my social media started off as a side hustle completely, right? I went in with the intention of making money. A lot of people go into social media because they're passionate about something, they want to be famous. I don't care about any of that. My goal is just to make money when I started my social media, right? So I started off with sort of memes and such because that's just sort of the only thing I knew. And then I grew my second account to a pretty significant following. And from there, I expanded into other accounts, and all of those are sort of generating me income. So I think the biggest thing I learned from that is that it is worth it so long as you are, number one, focused on money first, right? So if you're not focused on money, you're focused on passion. As soon as you lose that passion, you're no longer going to want to pursue it, right? And if you do that 5 or 6 times, you've now wasted a shit ton of your life on side ventures that don't work. So I think it should not be something you're passionate about. It should be something you are good at making money at. Money comes first, right? And some people aren't going to like to hear that, but that's the truth. The second thing is, I think it's something you need to stick to for the long term. But at the same time, everyone's heard of the sticking to the long term part. But at the same time, you have to know when to give up, right? Side ventures are not something you need to invest heavily in. Because of that, you should learn when to give up early. If you're not seeing success within, I'd say, a very reasonable amount of time, you should switch to something else. Okay. But once you find something that does work, never give that up. Okay. I learned that the hard way with YouTube. I gave up YouTube for like a year and now my channel's dead. But once you find something that works, don't give up on it.
Yeah, so I know you're talking about success a lot, so let's just come back into like building success through connections. Like, what type of people do you find are best to connect with in order to achieve success? Or, like, success?
So I think it's very different if you're looking at it from the perspective of a college student or the perspective of someone who wants to work in investment banking, computer science, right? If it is something college job related, chances are the job is going to be very hierarchical, right? The higher up you can connect, the better, right? But at the same time, the higher up you go, the less likely you are to have or be able to find a connection there. So I think when it comes to these hierarchical connecting, right? Start at the bottom and work your way up. And work your way up as high as possible. Because a lot of mistakes people make is they either immediately start gunning for like vice president, managing director, right? When in reality, what they should do is connect with some analysts, use those analysts to hope you get some associates, use some associates to hopefully get VPs, and then sort of just work your way up from there, right? But as a content creator, you're gonna wanna shoot for the biggest fish first, right? Because content creation is one of those things where like, as soon as you find one good connection, right, it'll lead you to everything. But one small connection will oftentimes not lead you to upwards to the big connection, right? If I start connecting with TikTokers, chances are I'll never reach Mr. Beast until I'm like 80 years old, right? Because social media is moving so fast. You need to start, aiming for bigger fish right away, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you kept talking about success and going for like bigger fish, and then I wanted to know like example, like education is the same thing. If you don't go to a good college, like people say, oh, you won't get investment banking or like you won't get a higher job in finance. So like, is it true that like when people go to a higher college, it's a better advantage?
Yeah, it's a huge advantage for a few reasons. Okay, so the hidden reason is that if you're getting into a elite college, you have done not only extraordinary at school, but you've hustled your way in, okay? Because being extraordinary at school is not enough, right? You need to show a tremendous amount of hustle and finesse to get in, right? So only the people that have, extraordinary levels of that are in these elite universities. And our society values that a lot. So because of that, there's like a hidden advantage that the elite universities have selected people that from high school were already on their way to success. I can nearly guarantee if you take Harvard students and put them at, I don't know, UW, UCLA, or a shittier one, UCI, they'll be very successful as well, right? So colleges have that advantage of putting all these people that are bound for success together, right? And you can network with all these people that were already bound for success, and it creates sort of like a super PAC, right? Like one gets a job, he references 2 or 3 of his friends, and then, or a fraternity, right? One club, one fraternity, one person gets something really good. Now his dad or uncle can now reference tons of people from that fraternity. And I think that's a super underrated part of an elite college. It's just the connections you get. And on top of that, right? The name on the resume means so much more than a lot of people think, just because, for example, someone's like, oh, I went to community college and now I work at Google, right? But for every one of those, there's 1,000 people from Harvard that now work at Google. Does it sort of make sense? So just the name on the resume does a lot in of itself.
So if you do go to a smaller college, like what do you do at that point?
Oh, well, you just make the best of your situation, right? Going to Harvard is like having two aces in poker, right? Like it's the best hand you could possibly get. But that doesn't mean you're going to win every hand, right? Because the river comes out. If there's jacks, then maybe someone going to, I don't know, UCI now has jacks. Now he's the winning hand. I just think that you can never view yourself as 100% bound to fail, right? No matter where you're at, whether you're homeless or fucking, I don't know, community college, I don't know, big state school, none of these are setting you up for failure. It just means you need to take effort to level your playing field with someone that went to Harvard. And that takes extraordinary amounts of time and effort on your part.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, going to different schools can give you different connections and lead you in different directions?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, that's sort of true in any setting, right? Like if you connect with different people, you're going to be driven in different directions. But I mean, like people from say Harvard or UPenn, Ivy Leagues, whatever, there are 90% of the people there are on a better path to success than someone from, I don't know, a shitty state school, right? But if you want to go from shitty state school path to Harvard path, you need to do a lot of preparation outside of college, going above and beyond in your school, your grades, your extracurriculars, in order to sort of change your path from there to there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so now like we've talked about the AI, the social media like revolution, I guess. So like what do you think of like do you think globalization is like something that is a positive that should be used?
Well, it depends on the person you are. I mean, for example, if you're a textile worker in New Mexico, you're not going to like globalization because now some guy from China or India has now taken your job and he's working at like 10 cents an hour. So companies are going to work with that guy that hires for 10 cents an hour, right? But at the same time, if you are, say, an investor or a student wanting to work in investment banking, I think globalization would be great for you, right? Because it'll benefit your position a lot, whether you're looking for a job or once you get in, that globalization is going to, allow for new markets to open. Maybe you could, find your way leading a new market open and then you're going to make a shit ton of money. But I think that it really depends. There's some things that are good, some things that are bad. I'll give some examples, but
Yeah.
I don't want to like, hey, Manish, I have a real quick question. Like, I don't want to like, get political, but like, what do you think you're like for a leader? It doesn't even have to be controlling like a country. Just like, what is the best qualities?
Okay, so number one, the most important for me, at least, it's going to be different for everyone. Most important for me is they go against the status quo. I don't like people that sort of just settle in the status quo, right? And then just sort of do the same old thing again. Obviously, there are some policies that I believe should follow the status quo, right? Freedom of speech, I think you should follow the status quo on that, right? But some stuff like, say, education, employment, unemployment, benefits, taxes, I think those sort of need to be changed drastically within the next 50 years. So I 100% of the time will vote for the leader that has the biggest ideas to change. Okay. The second one is I value honesty quite a bit. I don't like it when people in politics are shown to be dishonest or disingenuous multiple times, yet they still have continuing, reasons to run for office, right? And the third one is I don't like people that advocate only for a specific tiny subgroup of people, right? I don't really care. For example, like there's some people that only advocate for like people in bottom half income or only advocate for people of a certain color, right? I never understood that. Advocate for the average person, right? The average person shouldn't have to suffer because you want to advocate for a super small group of disenfranchised people, right?
So, like, this is the next question connects with this, but like, how do you like solve the problem of the people who are lower? Like, they want an opportunity to get into that higher. Exactly.
Yeah, I think there should be ways to uplift them, right? But I don't think your entire political campaign should be run on uplifting this very tiny group of people. That's my opinion. But in terms of how I think that could be solved, is I think there needs to be a standardized approach to testing. In China, and hopefully are you guys first generation or second generation immigrants, or?
I was born. Yeah, we're both born in India. Yeah. So.
Okay, but your parents came from India, right?
Yeah.
Probably went through an extremely rigorous set of testing where everyone takes the same test or similar tests. And that determines your success in life, right? I think that this test should be changed every year so that you cannot study for it, okay? Because I think that the issue with something like the SAT, you're a richer kid, you have more time to study, you have more opportunities to take multiple tests, you can afford tutors, all that shit, right? A poor kid, maybe you only had one opportunity to take it, you never hired a tutor, you did it on your own. I think this test should be something that purely tests your traits as a person, and based on those traits as a person, then that dictates what type of jobs you're suited for, what type of college you should gain entrance to, right? And I think this should all be, it should test for all facets of life, right? A lot of people are like, okay, then is that not just like sort of genetic selection? I think there should be ways within that test to test your, say, endurance, your discipline, right? I think they should develop something. Maybe it's like a week-long test or something, and that way it really levels the playing field for everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree with that.
That's just so you know, that's never gonna happen in the
Yeah,
US.
but
It's
that
never
was
gonna happen. But it's just idealistic. It's
Yeah.
idealistic, but it's an idea that I have and I have supported for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect society, that would work, but realistically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So like I'm gonna like say a couple quotes, and I just want you to like give your thoughts on it.
Sure.
The rich get richer, but the poor get poorer.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And I think that the system is sort of built in a way that if you are poor, you like, say, for example, a good example I like to give is if you're poor, there's probably like a 85% chance you're gonna stay poor the rest of your life, if not higher, right? So because of that, why not YOLO your income and buy scratch tickets? You know what I mean? So poor people are not able to take the same risks as people who come from a wealthier family. So because of that, generation-wise, rich people will get richer and poor people will get poorer. That's just like the example I give. They can't take equal amounts or the same amounts of risks. So that's going to happen. In terms of currently, society-wise, right, the middle class is shrinking because mega corporations are able to buy things that were once considered middle to lower class, right, like affordable housing, apartment complexes. They can buy this shit, and once they have a critical point, they have so much, they control the pricing of it for the entire future, right? And because of that, that's why people are forced to rent, but not able to invest properly as well as before, right? So because of that, those people will now be poor, and the rich take the profits.
Yeah. One more quote. So the wealthy are not taxed enough.
In terms of percentile wise, I think they are sort of taxed enough. I think they need to rework how like tax deductions work. For example, right, income tax, right? If you're extremely wealthy, you need to pay a higher bracket of tax. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
However, the extremely wealthy have these tax loopholes where they can reduce their income to zero, right? And then they can have zero income tax. That in itself doesn't make sense to me. So I think there needs to be some way to address that. But at the same time, this is super unpopular. But I think people who are in the lower class also should be taxed more. Maybe not in the form of taking money out of their pocket, but maybe more in the form that they should not be given the same amount of support that they're given now, in my opinion, right? For example, if you are not valuable enough to society to where it is not, no one in society wants to keep you alive, right? Whether through donations or giving you a job, then maybe you need to be forced to find a way to be valuable to society, right? Or else you shouldn't be able to afford food. Like,
but Manish, do you have any like curiosity questions or just like last second?
Yeah, sure.
Things? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I know you've done. I haven't got into it, but I know you've done an internship or a job at Truck Smarter or like
Yeah, I'm working full time there as a social media manager.
Yeah, so could you explain what you do there? That'd be good.
I just run their company social media. It's pretty simple.
Okay.
Yeah, I just run their company social media. It's more high level than it sounds,
Okay.
but
Yeah. All right. So do you have any advice for, I guess, because most high schoolers are gonna watch this, our friends, and also advice for high schoolers, college students,
Sure,
just to get up there, level up.
Yeah, I mean, so a few things are, number one, you should have a high SAT score. I think, no matter who you are, whether you're applying to a lower tier college or you don't care about going to Ivy League, some jobs will ask for your SAT score. Citibank, Citi, I think it's the third largest investment bank. They care about your SAT score. You got to put that on your application. But that's the biggest thing, I think, because the SAT is not a way of setting yourself apart from others, but it's a good way of making sure you're at least on a qualified level, right? So if you don't have above, say 1450, probably take it a few more times. The second thing is, don't be too honest on your college application, because at the end of the day, the person that lied, if you had two equal people, the person that lied is going to get into the college. They can't background check basically anything you put on there, right? So you are incentivized to not be honest. Like that's just how the system works. And you have a choice of either playing with the system and benefiting tremendously or getting fucked over because you were too honest. And I truly believe that I sort of was on this line. Like obviously I wasn't completely honest. I know people that were far more honest than me, and I know people that bullshitted their entire application. And I think that had I restarted, right, I had nearly perfect grades, perfect SAT. Had I restarted, I think I could have been in a much better position had I bullshitted more.
Manish, you have any questions, or you good?
Yeah, I think that's all we had for you, Andrew.
Okay, so Andrew, thanks for joining. You know, you actually
thank you very much.
Yeah, you actually talked about a lot. So yeah, that was good. Like it was good information.
I appreciate it, guys.
It was good
like
information.
So